Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever. We're today reviewing the new album from Portal, Ion. Now when it comes to most of the album reviews I do here on the channel, they're projects that I have kind of in mind to review a good amount of time in advance prior to their release. Usually because, of course, I'm a fan of the artists themselves, so of course I plan on reviewing their new material. Or it's just something that, lots of people are maybe excited for, so I decide to maybe, check it out when it's released, especially if it's coming from, like, a new artist or something like that. But occasionally, I, of course, watch reviews here on YouTube. I am a YouTube video, watcher, if you couldn't tell, when it comes to music reviews. Of course, that's what inspired me to do this in the first place. And occasionally, I do like to check out albums that are, praised by lots of people I watch on here, and that's oftentimes how I discover new music. And occasionally, if that music happens to be pretty interesting, I sometimes decide to review it here on the channel, even though I don't really have much of a background with the artists themselves, or much background at all really to go on other than the album itself. And quite recently, I saw the review for this album done by The Needle Drop, who gave it a pretty positive review. And considering what happened last time, I checked out an album of his that he gave a very positive review to. It ended up ranking pretty highly on my best of the year list. I figured I might as well give this a listen, see if I like it. What's the worst that could possibly happen? So yeah, I ended up liking the project. So here we are talking about it now. So once again, I really don't have much of a history with this band or anything of that sort. I've really just listened to this album a ton over the past couple of days, really just taking it in, and really, I do really like this project, and I'm really just going to be going off this project and this project alone here in this review. I'm not going to be able to really, really compare it or put it into the context of any of their other works, but at the same time, I guess it might be a bit interesting to see the opinion of someone who is, completely new to this group, completely new to this, and just see what the, my thoughts are on this compared to someone who maybe is familiar with their other works. And it's not to say I won't ever check out their previous works, because based on this album, how much I'm enjoying this project, I definitely will check out their other albums at some point in the near future. But today, just talking about this album here, yeah, this is a pretty great metal album. I really like just the overall sort of feel and atmosphere that this thing has going for it. It just sounds like a very dark, a very nasty, just hellish kind of album, but like in the best way possible. The like growled, whispered vocals that just run throughout this project are, just have a very just dark, ominous, scary sort of feel to them that just when listening to this thing, they just feel almost otherworldly, and it's just fantastic, really, all the way through. I also like how this album, and I'm guessing just this band here on this project, how they're able to show off a pretty technical, just a lot of technical ability when it comes to the guitar work and the drums and all of that, but without really sounding too mechanical, which is a problem I have with a lot of more technical bands, especially nowadays. Oftentimes, if it ends up sounding, just really technical and just very mechanical, I really just I don't really develop much of a connection to it. But this band successfully manages to avoid that by keeping in a lot of those very non-mechanical, I guess you could say, elements to the music, whether it be those vocals I was talking about before, or just the overall sense of atmosphere that this project manages to have at times. Just take the opening track on this thing, which isn't really much of a song as much as it is sort of this atmospheric sort of opening, and it just sets the mood very nicely for this project. Now when it comes to sort of introduction tracks like this that are just kind of made to set the mood for the project by introducing some atmosphere or something like that, sometimes they could feel a bit tacked on, a bit unnecessary, but I just feel like with the overall feel that this album has going for it, I think it just works very nicely in the context of the album. I think the album is improved by having this at the start of it instead of just, launching with just some crazy technical riffs or anything like that. And I do kind of like how we see these similar sort of atmospheric moments pop up on some of the other tracks as well, maybe in the outros or intros, just kind of connecting these tracks in between one another. It's almost like between these moments of just madness on this album of crazy guitar work and just otherworldly vocals, it gives you a moment to breathe. But while it's giving you a moment to breathe, it's not exactly, you know, letting go of the intensity or anything like that. Like, there's still this very dark, very suffocating feel to the atmosphere in these, you know, more atmospheric moments that kind of, you know, happen between some of these songs. But at the same time, it doesn't let go of that dark feel, which is very important. You know, lots of times if, you know, an artist wants to kind of keep a similar sound running throughout the project but have some sort of transition, sometimes it doesn't work out all that nicely. But on this album, it does work very nicely. It gives you a moment to breathe, but it doesn't let go of the atmosphere that the project has running throughout it, which I think is a very, you know, one of the strongest points of this album. While this album does have those more atmospheric moments that occasionally pop up in its runtime, the rest of the album, kind of like I alluded to earlier, is just a lot of dark, crazy madness, really. I think that's kind of the best way to describe it. You have lots of crazy technical guitar work, some just fantastic sounding riffs. The vocals, like I mentioned earlier, just sound otherworldly, especially when paired up with the sound of all the other instruments going on here. And there's a lot of really noisy tracks on this thing, particularly the track Spores, which I think is just the most chaotic track on this. I mean, there's definitely a kind of a rhythm going through this track, but the rest of the song is just, you know, trying to pick out what exactly is going on here in like this sea of just technical, noisy, metallic chaos. It's difficult to make out what's going on, but that's part of the beauty of the song, I think. Just in this sea of, you know, very technical, crazy, you know, otherworldly sounding tracks, you have this track that just kind of stands out as being like the most of all of those traits out of all of these songs, and it's a pretty great song in my opinion. Another moment on this album that I'm just really in love with is kind of the outro sort of part on the track Crona. I believe that's how it's pronounced. If not, leave down in the comments down below how I'm supposed to pronounce that, because I'm probably saying it wrong because I'm terrible at pronouncing things. But the outro of this track is another one of my favorite moments on this album. Just the kind of build-up that it has to it, with the vocals just kind of repeating this sort of just sinister vocals over this build-up that just kind of explodes at the end, at right the very end of the song. It's just a really cool part of the album, and just a very dark, suffocating, crazy feel to it that I really love from this thing. It's one of my favorite moments on this album. I also really like the closing track. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly again. Old Guard, I believe that's how the track is pronounced. But I really love the outro of this track. It's one of those moments where the album gets a bit more just atmospheric and moves away from the crazy technicality. And it sounds a lot like the opening track, this outro part, in terms of like the sound that it's going for. And I kind of like how the album starts and ends with a very similar sound. It just makes the entire album experience feel more like, you know, an experience of itself. This isn't really just a collection of songs compiled together. Like, this is a project that you're supposed to listen to from, you know, start to end, and it creates this experience running all the way through. And I really like how it's kind of shown in the outro of this track, and how it just kind of ties back to the opening of the album. Overall, I think this is a pretty great album in my opinion. Probably one of my favorite metal albums I've heard this year so far. I mean, it's only the beginning of the year really. It's February now, but I think this album is going to stick with me throughout the year, and I think there's a good chance it's going to be on my best of albums at the year's end, because I think this is going to be a pretty great album still in a few months to come. Yeah, I'm happy I checked this thing out, and once again, this is my opinion on this album from a new fan of this band, I guess you could say. This is the only album from them that I've heard as of now. I mean, I listened to it a lot for this review, not just to, you know, have enough to talk about it when reviewing it, just because I really enjoyed it as well. But yeah, if you enjoy like kind of crazy technical death metal, kind of maybe a bit of black metal as well, just if you like some crazy extreme metal, something a bit interesting, something that's just a really kind of insane, otherworldly kind of feeling project, you should definitely check out this album, because I feel like you'll probably like it if you're into those things that I just said. But you know, that's just my own opinion. If you like this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future album reviews, and other music-related content, countdowns, discussions, all those sorts of things. Comment down below your thoughts on this project, as well as any corrections for my pronunciation of any of the things I said in this video incorrectly. I guarantee I did make a mistake somewhere. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay golden.